he's actually quite a long way ahead on the key issues which we think in this election of the economy and immigration.
Yeah.
So when you measure up Trump against Harris, who is the most trusted on the economy, it's Trump 51 and Harris 41. So that's a big difference, 10 points. Similarly, on immigration, it's Trump 52 and Harris 40. So she's got a lot of work to do to make up ground on really perhaps the two issues that are top of mind for most voters.
But let's start off with this stateside, because a new YouGov survey has put the presumed new Democratic candidate, Kamala Harris, well, it says as more popular than President Joe Biden, but still 2 points behind former President Trump. Mr. Trump remains clearly the most trusted candidate on the two big issues of the economy and immigration, while Harris leads on issues of abortion and the environment. Well, let's talk to the Times assistant US editor David Charter. He's got more. David, hello again.
Hello, Henry, from Washington, D.C.
It's great to talk to you. Okay, so how surprised were you, first of all, by the narrowing of the gap? I mean, Kamala Harris, at the moment, is going to give Donald Trump a much tougher race than Joe Biden would have, despite what Trump said. He said, we're going to beat her more easily. That's what he said initially, didn't he?
That's right, Henry. Yeah, there's a lot of things in play here that we're trying to tease out, and perhaps I think only time will tell how this is going to settle down. Because on the one hand, you may have expected a bit more of a bounce for Harris, as so many Americans wanted Biden to drop out and agree that he was right to do so. That's another clear finding from the poll. Like 4/5 of Americans think it was the right thing for him to do. And yet she remains 2 points behind Trump on 44%, Trump on 46%. A small number for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., just 4%. That's interesting. Some of those people seem to have fallen away from the third-party candidate. And it's in line with other polling we've been seeing, Henry, that's coming out today, like a New York Times poll that puts Trump on 48 and Harris on 47. So within the margin of error each time, Trump's still ahead. And then I was speaking to our pollster from YouGov, who's been crunching the data with us, and he said, do you know what? Harris is perhaps doing a little better than you may think, because you would expect from the Republican convention, the big primetime speech of the candidate, that was Trump last Thursday night, and the choice of running mate, Trump unveiling J.D. Vance. Those are normally two events that give a bounce to the candidate, because for the first time, perhaps a lot of Americans tune in to what's going on and perhaps see a lot of publicity for one side, for the Trump side in this case. So he was saying what he thinks is shown by this finding is not only is Harris doing slightly better than Biden and has reversed all of the decline that we saw after his TV debate, but she seems to have neutralized any favorable bounce that would have been brought and could have been expected, from the assassination attempt for a start, but also from the convention, from these big set piece events. Because bear in mind, a lot of Americans don't really engage with the election until convention time, until they get a chance to see this big speech that's carried live in so many networks.
And David, that's the broad picture. Do we have any data on what's happening in those key swing states, the likes of Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, or Pennsylvania? Because that's where Kamala Harris needs to make up the ground, doesn't she, on Trump?
Yeah, that's where the election's going to be won and lost. And unfortunately, this polling is national polling.
Yeah.
So we don't go into the swing states. But what you touched on, I think, in the intro was very interesting, and this is actually in Trump's favor, is that he's actually quite a long way ahead on the key issues which we think in this election of the economy and immigration. Yeah. So when you measure up Trump against Harris, who is the most trusted on the economy, it's Trump 51 and Harris 41. So that's a big difference, 10 points. Similarly, on immigration, it's Trump 52 and Harris 40. So she's got a lot of work to do to make up ground on really perhaps the two issues that are top of mind for most voters.
Yeah, but what about issues that might be top of mind for 52% of the population, women, their freedom to choose bodily autonomy?
Correct. On the abortion issue, Harris, the picture is completely reversed. We've got Harris 51 and Trump 37. And not surprising, because we saw in the 2022 midterms that a lot of the so-called red wave petered out, and the Democrats held on, held the Senate, came very close to holding the House, because that was in the immediate aftermath of the Supreme Court, this conservative Supreme Court, scrapping the universal right of access to abortion. And Harris who made an unsteady start as vice president. You may recall she was put in charge of limiting immigration and migrants coming up from Central America.
Oh, it's when they sent her down to the border and she hadn't been. Is that right? I remember that one.
Yeah, that's right. And she said, well, I haven't been to Europe either, in that terrible interview she did. And she's regarded as something of a failure in that sense, because the 2023 saw record levels of immigrants and turning up willy-nilly at the border, applying for asylum or trying to sneak in. But since the Roe v. Wade was overturned, I think she's found her feet a bit with this issue of, bringing back the right of access to abortion. And that's something that she's closely identified with now, and is certainly a big theme of the speeches she's been making in the last few days.
Okay, and here's one more thing to leave us with. I'm just looking at the difference in the polling between what people said in May 2015 is another YouGov poll, when Hillary Clinton announced her presidential campaign. 63% of registered voters said the country was ready for a female leader, but that's gone down. When the question was asked again just recently, only 54%. That's not good for Kamala Harris. People think the US is less ready to elect a woman as president now than they did 9 years ago.
Yeah, this is a really interesting question, Henry, because people were asked, what do you think that the Americans will do? And so we're asking people to gauge the mood of the country, and perhaps there was a Hillary Clinton effect. Who knows? But in any case, over those 9 years, there's been a drop, as you say, of 9 points in the belief that a woman, that the country's ready for a woman leader. And this is despite the fact that various women leaders, have come forward. Like Nikki Haley gave Trump a pretty good run for his money in the primary. And several women are very prominent on this Supreme Court. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, of course, the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Nevertheless, it does seem that that's the sentiment in the country. I should say that other pollsters say that there is other evidence that when women leaders are elected to high positions, such as Nancy Pelosi becoming the first female Speaker of the House, that they are well regarded, generally speaking, and given the polarized nature of the age we live in. And so it is a matter of somehow breaking the glass ceiling. I mean, my own personal feeling is that if, for example, Biden was to give his last few months to Harris as president, if he was to step aside and admit that he's rather unwell, that would be demonstrating to Americans that here we have a woman president. It can be done.
Yes, it can
Perhaps
be done.
that might help change sentiment.
Who knows? Maybe the long goodbye wouldn't be so long after all. Hey, David, thank you very much. Great to talk to you. David Charter, the Times Assistant US Editor. As it stands, the Biden long goodbye is going to last up to 6 months.